The first tap of a conductor's wand. The first rivet in a mile-high tower. The master link at the genesis of a never-ending chain. The moment a single empty canvas meets a singular master stroke. There is no one thing. Because now, there are many. Because soon, there will be more. Because one is ever the beginning. Like the first link in an infinite chain, or the first rivet in the tallest skyscraper. The master stroke is found in the masterpiece. What will you begin?
All right, everyone, welcome to the 21st episode of the World Blockchain Roundtable. Our hosts for today are Austin from Rivet, Ross from Global Crypto Press, Sean, creator and entrepreneur, and Wolf from Polarity Exchange and fellow BPSSA member. I'm Joe, architect or founder of Dragonchain. Quick update on last week's show. Everyone who participated gets some lot. Every host is going to get 133 lot, and every topic contributor is going to receive 27 lot. The ownership tokens, layer ownership tokens come with perpetual passive income, free edits, and future governance votes. So the theme this week is blockchain for security. How's everybody doing? Thanks for coming on, guys.
Doing all right. Thanks for having me.
Yes, very good, very good. Greg's not here this week. That's interesting.
This week.
He's here always, right?
I know. He told me to apologize for him, but he's having a rough morning.
Cool. And hopefully Wolf comes on. I think he was in transit or something, so we'll see. But anyway, let's go. You want to go to the questions? Is that good?
It's going to throw my week off. Greg not being here. I'm just saying. I already spilled water all over my lap. So.
That's what happens. We'll have to remind him. All right. So we refresh. And we see, okay, is this already refreshed? Yes. All right, this is already refreshed. So the first question from Juan Esperanza. If a company was looking to implement security with a blockchain solution, what would be the highlights, big picture, and what makes it better than what is currently being used? I'm assuming currently without blockchain, right? So what are you guys' thoughts? These emotional
always immutability and transparency. I mean, it doesn't stop fraud. It doesn't stop a lot of stuff, but it makes it a lot harder to hide.
Right. And, so I actually gave a talk about this a few years ago at the National Association of Legislative IT Summit, which is state legislature IT. But there are a lot of people out there, who have positions on the Gartner Magic Quadrant, who will promise you all sorts of things that blockchains don't actually bring you. But the real things that, excuse me, that blockchain technology really does do for corporate security, or can do for corporate security, is it can give you absolute certainty over the provenance of something. And by that, I mean, you can see the entire history, transaction by transaction, on the way back to wherever something started. So, there are a lot of people starting to use this for things like supply chain, where they can see, it went from here to here, and this person signed for it. And that's going into a registry that nobody can mess with. So, there's with traditional IT, like you might have a database and you might have backups of that database, but I almost guarantee you there is some guy who has the ability to go in and make changes to that database. But when you're talking about a distributed ledger that requires massive amounts of hashing power, compute, or even in a proof of authority, proof of stake type system where you've got thousands of people that you would have to get to align with you in order to make changes to this data, there's just no way that somebody went and changed it. And then I kind of sort of started to misspeak, but proof of authority blockchains where you just have different people signing for each successive block in a corporate environment, especially if you have projects that you're working on across several different organizations. There's projects like Quorum, where yes, essentially it's just a proof of authority blockchain. If you got everybody together, you could go and change stuff. But if you have 20 different organizations that take turns signing blocks, most likely they're doing that so that none of them can turn around and pull something over on the other ones. And so I think there is space for like proof of authority blockchains if you have the appropriate interested parties all signing off on things. That's not like I wouldn't recommend that you go put valuable applications on like Goerli or Rinkeby, these proof of authority blockchains. They're fine for testing your dApps, but I wouldn't put sensitive applications on there. But when you can get all of the interested parties to what a blockchain is there for as signers, you can be pretty darn sure that nobody's messing with it, because they'd all have to mess with it. And if they're all messing with it, who are they messing with it to fool?
Right. Right. I mean, and by the way, when you mention that, it's extremely important because I can take that information, and when people think about it, a lot of times they're thinking, okay, I'm going to follow the transactions through. They're thinking about money, but it very often can be identity data or a proof that someone legally is bound to some terms or something. And if you can go back and show that it, and again, no matter if it's proof of work, proof of stake, or some combination thereof, that they can prove that that thing happened, even though the actual data is not exposed. And in the end, it ends up being so in the scenario that would be required to change that data, that person, instead of just having access to my own corporate database, which they obviously do, that they could go back and change stuff. You think about a legal proceedings, and somebody's getting sued for something. It's like, well, if it's a lot of money, it's pretty obvious. Or if there's internal fraud, right? That people can change data inside those corporate systems. Mm-hmm. Everybody knows this. And the fact that you're decentralizing it in any way, even if it's in a light capacity, even if it's not very strong, it still makes it way harder. But the interesting part, in my opinion, then when you're talking about, the highlights are that proof of stake and proof of work in particular provide a measurable value. So it is something that I can say, look, okay, on Ethereum Classic, it costs approximately X to attack that network, right?
Right. So if you're going to claim that this thing that I published on this date was actually published, 3 weeks later, you've got massive amounts of hashing power. That would have been a very expensive experiment. And then there's a whole bunch of people who would have noticed it because all of their systems broke when you had this massive reorg.
Yeah. And that's it. That basically, our take on it is that you want as many of those and as much variety as possible, because if one of them falls down, it would be very, very unlikely that Bitcoin and Ethereum Classic and so on, all fall over on themselves at the same time.
Barring quantum supremacy.
And the world would know, even though it's your transaction that the world doesn't even know about that is being attacked, the world would know something's up because they would see all of this reorgs.
One of the other things that I think is potentially significant is fulfilling notification requirements. So, again, I used to work with state legislatures, and went to talk to NAILIT about how state legislatures might potentially be able to apply blockchains. Like if you've got the Democrats and you've got the Republicans who both have a signing authority on what's going on a blockchain, the Democrats can't complain, oh, the Republicans snuck this in and didn't notify us, because if they didn't sign that block, they signed one of the next 7, and so it was there. They had the opportunity to see it.
Yeah. Yep.
I think it's just such a hard mindset shift to get people to think of blockchain in any circumstance other than money. But it really is just as simple as if you currently trust the system to keep track of your funds, that same system can protect any piece of data the exact same way. It's just not being put to use well yet.
Yeah.
Well,
It's about the printing press and not about the money.
And I came to this space with a little bit of an advantage because the company where I worked in the legislative space, they had this system where they did version every single change that was made to any piece of data in their system. So you could go back and say, this is what happened. This was the person who made the change. And so I was already in the mindset of, let's be able to see how all of the stuff changes. But that system, it was a centralized thing where like it would have been very complicated for any one person to go in and change that history, but there would have been nothing, mathematically,
Right.
where it's going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, or you've got to get a whole bunch of collaborators.
Yeah.
That wasn't the case there. But I was already in the mindset of thinking about things in terms of
transactional data
over times and having that kind of provenance.
I very similar. I was involved in a few projects where we had a need not only to have data modeling for current state, snapshot, whatever else, but then the transactional, so that you could recreate various operations, because they would have to, variety of reasons. There were reasons they had to dial back the clock, and yet this was in the early 2000s, late 90s actually, and there was no way to prove it. You just had to say, well, we trust all of our admins, and we're doing everything we can best. But yeah, I don't know. Anything else you want to go to next?
Yeah, let's move on.
Let's go. Okay, so next, let's see here from Jacob Wayne, a topic: deciding whether or not to bake in a backdoor, a code into your code in case there is a security breach. I'm not sure if I totally understand. Are they asking why backdoors exist? What do you think?
So I mean, in the context of blockchain and smart contracts and whatnot, I mean, there have been some cases where year and a half ago, I think it was Synthetics had a case where their system got hacked, and through their administrative or admin contracts, they were able to go in and basically screw over the guy who had done that hack and get all of their funds back. And then, a lot of people are looking at that going, well, okay, like if they can do that for this hack, then they can do that if the government comes and knocks on their door and tells them to take away my money. Like, so,
well, backdoors exist. Backdoors exist probably on every device that you have in your house, almost certainly. The question is the source, right? Is it the manufacturer, one of the components? Because there are, nation state level backdoors everywhere, right? Guarantee Android and iPhone have them. I guarantee most of the hardware has them. I don't know I'm not an expert at some of that, but that's why some hardware is, disallowed by the government if it isn't, if it's made in certain countries.
And broadly, this is why I say we shouldn't be doing things like, particularly device backdoors, or why I say that we shouldn't be doing things like voting on the blockchain, is because no matter how much integrity and confidence you've got on this back-end system that's counting and tallying the votes, if you can't trust that this thing is showing you what you actually think, or what this thing is showing you corresponds to what it's doing on the back end, you don't really have any confidence that what you're. And it's like, I have a ledger, one of those little crypto wallets that shows me on this tiny little screen on this hardware device that doesn't plug into the internet of exactly what this transaction is going to do. And I don't trust that, when I copy an address from my computer, like when my business partners and I are sending large transactions between accounts or paying bills or whatever through crypto, I get on the phone and I read Greg the address that we're sending stuff to off of my ledger, because I don't trust that my computer screen is going to show me the right thing. I mean, like, it, as a matter of course, I usually do, but for very large transactions, I want an extra layer of confidence.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
so,
there are things you can add to the interface and the protocol to solve some of those. I mean, that you have to know what you're doing, and the challenge is making an interface that a normal person doesn't
Right.
have to know everything. But that's always the holes, right? So the more education people have, the easier it is to make these real things happen. Because I think blockchain voting can happen because, and
Well, with blockchain voting, the end result, because of the immutability, is visible. So even if your phone screwed you, even if there was a conspiracy with, other hardware robots or whatever, in the end, you could check your vote and say, oh, that's not how it was supposed to be.
but if you can check your vote, you can prove it after the fact, and people can coerce you into voting a certain way and proving to them that you did. So,
As
but
of
that can
now,
happen anyway.
there's no way you can prove stuff of anything.
People
Try and audit.
Yeah, people
Right.
throw those up all the time. It's like, oh, but if you have, let's say, a corrupt organization trying to get you to vote a certain way, they can do that today, because you're already printing out some receipt, or we say, okay, if you want us to pay you to vote the way we want you to pay you to vote, then you have to take a picture of the paper ballot in the booth,
Right.
and they can already do that. That can't really be an argument against it. It is instead, what's the interface so that we can prove that this person is who they say they are, that they are eligible to vote, so on, so on, so on. And yes, any backdoor in that hardware that if you have a Huawei device or something, right? Potentially they could do something on there that could fake the vote, right? But there would be evidence of it. And at least in certain models, you would be able to correct a vote if you then went onto the website and said, wait a minute, I didn't vote that way. And, I can still prove it's me, so I could still change my vote to what it's supposed to be before
up
the
until a
deadline,
certain
right?
time, yeah.
Yeah. So,
I don't know if you guys saw the story a couple months ago where the U.S. Senate actually proposed a bill called Lawful Access to Encrypted Data Act, where by law, like Android and iPhone, they would have to code backdoors into their OSs, and the government would have access to it, or at least some way to decrypt anything encrypted. Basically, they needed the master key. It didn't go that far, but we were almost China. I mean, we really up to that line.
Oh yeah, that's not the first time they've done that, right? There have been several times they've tried to either they try to outlaw it. They can't outlaw it, so they're trying to limit access to it. They try to then they went backdoors. And here's the thing: you remember the Apple hack with the terrorist attack in California? I can't remember what town it was in.
Yeah.
Right. Apple, it was a huge deal. It was like, nope, we are Apple, and we will not unlock this because we are, this matters to us security. There was already a backdoor, and it came out even months later, and everybody knew. Anybody who watches the real world knows that there was already a backdoor.
A backdoor or an exploit?
It was a 0-day exploit.
Backdoor I see is intentionally
very
placed.
specific.
Exploit meaning.
Okay. Well, but still, it's like it was known, and that was all theater. So,
and that's kind of the argument: is there's no such thing as a secure program. There's only one where the latest exploit hasn't been discovered yet.
And that's why, in my opinion, even if something is not secure, the history is important, because you can at least show, look, this is precisely what happened. We can prove that it happened between here and here. This is the transaction that does not mesh with the rest, right? And that's an interesting thing, that, you could, if you wanted, and I've not really thought too much about it to this level, because we're just trying to get people to the first level with, as an example, on the voting issue, that you could have what would amount to multiple other factors that could be verified in your process of placing the vote, that we would actually require the person to go through some level of verification that, yes, maybe on a different device, maybe even as complex but as interesting as with other people, which with voting that's hard, but they could verify hashes. They could verify, oh yes, that's the same answer I get. I can't tell you how you voted. There are at least interesting things you could do there. And when you're talking about anything else, because voting is interesting because it includes identity, history, various levels of privacy, where you can't see my vote, but you have to be able to count it along with all the others without knowing whose it is, that type of thing. Very interesting. But any place that identity comes in, or any place where administrative actions or anything that's of known importance inside of an organization, those things, in my opinion, should be on chain, because that way you can dial back the clock and see what happened, whether it's for liability reasons or whatever else, right?
And even if it's, like we were talking about proof of authority chains earlier, if you have a proof of authority chain and then check in your block hash once a day to the Ethereum mainnet, then you can't. You've got checkpoints beyond which you can't.
Right, you can't cheat, and that's why my theory on that is you want as much info as reasonably possible. So you want to make the blockchain as scalable as possible, because I would rather have a company storing a ton of mundane data that all then can be pulled into a result where that entirety is on chain, and 99% of it is not going to be potentially used, or at least used for the purpose I think. Maybe I use it for something else later. But the point is, it's not like somebody saying every 30 minutes, oh, the result was X, and it's all of the data that goes into that result being X is not already prehistory on chain, right? It doesn't mean much if we just say, oh, we decided X on chain. Really, right. What matters is all the stuff that went into that decision to know, was X really true, or did somebody, screw around with stuff and, so that they got the best result. Anyway, okay. Next question. And Wolf is here, right? I think we did hear him, so this is good.
Thanks. That's correct. I ended up making it just in time, guys.
Right on. Okay. Next from M. Ladizi. Topic: potential of blockchain technology in cryptographic hash immutability feature on combating deepfakes. What do you guys think? Proof of, how can we use blockchain to combat deep fakes? And what do you think about deep fakes in particular?
It doesn't seem very practical, right? I don't really know why you would use blockchain in this case.
So, I think the idea is that you can prove that some entity signed off that this is a real version of this thing as of this time, and that is, cannot be retracted. But that's really all you can get. You can't prove that it was real. You can just prove that somebody said it was real at a particular time.
Mm-hmm. These are horrifying. That's how we feel. But I think they're a wake-up call, and I think they're one of the first things that we've created that is beyond our capability. Where everything that we can do, there's no way we could figure it out. When it comes to the audio fake, linked to a super high quality deep fake, and then the same person, the real person next to him, I don't know anyone that could tell the difference. So I think it's definitely a kind of when it comes to people that are really like Musk is really scared of AI and directions that we're going. I think this is one of the first things. It's like, oh my God, we really can create something that there's not many ways we can figure out. A regular person, what the difference is, or like with an app or some kind of cheap software that we can, that's fake, that was Photoshop, something like that. This is different.
Well, and yeah, because you're training adversarial neural networks to learn, okay, what about this are people using to figure out that it's fake? Okay, take that part out. Okay, now looking at it, how can I tell that this is fake? Okay, take that part out, fix that, until there's nothing left. And like, most deepfake systems right now aren't that good, but they will be in 5 years.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Well, they might. There are a couple of things that the first is there'll be artifacts. Like if it's a mobile device, deepfake type thing, there are apps to do various things. Those are pretty easily found. There are obvious artifacts. I almost guarantee, I don't know this, I almost guarantee that there's some type of deep watermarking as well, that they would be able to pull it out and say, oh, yeah, you say that's our guy, but really, look, we can prove that it isn't here. Who knows? They probably are.
These technologies only get better with time, right?
Yes. But the question I have is, why so much money on research into it? What was the goal there? What's the purpose? Because there was some big money that went into research and build some of the very first ones, like 3 or 4 years back. And I always wondered that. But I think the key, and it's hard to do because if it's theoretically historical info, you can't really say much. But it's really going to matter the provenance and evidence around that. Do we have, let's say this is somebody who is of input, because if it's somebody who nobody knows who this is, it doesn't really matter. But if a deep fake of them doing something, okay, it might maybe there's some legal thing that would matter there. But if it's a politician or somebody in some important place of power, and there's a deep fake of them saying something that would be, or doing something, who knows what, that it would matter what comes around it. Is there more video or audio for that matter? Is there, when they were in this location, can we even look at flight plans and see were they really there? That type of thing, right? Because that's happened already with politicians, that they've the global press came out with certain things about certain people that it wasn't even a deep fake, but they ran with it, and it turns out that this person wasn't even where they were supposed to have been for this. There's proof of it. So it's kind of a weird thing. But the more you can get on chain, the better, right? If all those flight records were on chain, if all of any potential messaging was on chain, but it was private and whatever, or even the evidence of it, then. But I think everything revolves around. Look, we can show all these various things, and then here is this person doing X. Okay, that's really hard to refute, right? So,
I think a big concern, and like the worst case scenario that I heard that did sound kind of scary, is somebody using it to cause kind of a impulse response, a panic decision, where you could deep fake somebody who's the president of a country, for example, going on TV and giving a speech that they are now declaring war with a neighboring country. Use a botnet to spam that video like crazy on Twitter and see if the rival military responds by seeing if it's real first or by launching what they think is a retaliatory strike.
Mm-hmm.
Could you imagine the president of Afghanistan that ran away, but instead was on all media's deepfaked, just calling everyone to just rise up and revolt and attack the Taliban? It's really it's scary, because like Ross was saying, that instant panic or that instant call to action, in our own country, as tightly wound as everything is, if somebody defaked Trump, I mean, all the like super crazy right wings to like, it is time, launch the attack. I mean, it would be insane. And if the other side was looking to create some chaos so that they could just round people up, that would be kind of one of the perfect plans.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what. That's why when I ask about why was that money put into deepfakes, they haven't. You think about this at that level, especially for organizations that were in that, because it wasn't. I can't remember who it was, but one of the funders was, one of the. They might be considered in the military industrial complex, right? So you can imagine, but that money has never really. There's never been a serious attempt to handle protection of identity in a way that would prevent the use of it for that reason. That is, let's say anybody of importance, I'll tell you what we did in 2017 when we did our token sale, something because I was so concerned about identity issues, right? And I was frustrated that tools didn't exist, that even though all these projects were going out doing blockchain, crypto, that they weren't even paying attention. And constantly people would come out with a project, and in the midst of everything going on, some announcement would come from their lead or from the official account. And it turns out, okay, it was either a hacked account, or more often it was literally just a very well done, sometimes lazy, but very well done impersonation. And that those would cause people to lose tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars, because they would just jump, just like you said, somebody comes out with something. And that's a very small scale compared. But why then would the president of the United States, why then would Trump, why then would any senator not have a freaking public key that could say, look, if I publish anything of significance, if it's a Ted Cruz, if it's a joke, I'm not going to sign it, right? But if it's anything of significance, it's going to be freaking signed, and you're going to be able to verify that was mine, right? And now it narrows way down to, okay, yes, you could potentially somehow compromise their account and get that key and then sign stuff, but at least now it's much, much harder, right?
So you're talking about like putting a press release or a video on the blockchain.
And it's more than that. And the reason I say blockchain is important, and this is what we found. So we signed everything that went out. But the ideal system is one in which known announcements are put on chain. You can't see what the announcement is yet. So this is akin to a Tron project thing, right? So Justin Sun puts his announcement on chain. And only if that announcement has been on chain for a day will it actually be announced. And the reason that matters is because now when an announcement comes out, I can go back and see that this really was their key, really did happen at that time, or really was put on chain at that time. And why does that matter? Because that gives them a day, if they had an issue with their keys, to say, holy crap, there's an announcement coming out that is not us. Revert to these keys, blah, 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 right?
Yeah, but you're talking about douchebags,
But no, I'm talking about, if that was the president, if that would prevent.
Right. Like I said, you're talking about douchebags who in no way will hold on to their private keys. They're going to, this is my press person who I went through 5 of them. They've all had my private key for my information releases. So I don't know.
But you're throwing that in there. Do you think that can't be solved? I mean, they don't have this. They don't have this model at all right now.
Right.
They at least had. This is the process. If we make an announcement as from the White House, let's say, it is nonsensical that doesn't exist.
There is no authenticity whatsoever to those. Right. And like if you had a system where the president has a key, like ideally the way you structure this is the president doesn't give his key to his press secretary. He authorizes his press secretary to sign things.
It would be the comms
and it would come out with the press secretary's signature that you could then verify on chain that the press secretary is authorized to sign this thing.
And it would effectively be the comms equivalent, or the communications equivalent of the football, the nuclear football.
And
they have the Marine there all the time. I think it's the Marine with the freaking briefcase, and that's a thing. And so you would do the same thing with communications, because communications.
And is it going to be perfect? No, but it's like right now we're not even trying.
Yeah, I was just thinking it would have to be put to that level. But it's like if you have, every senator has to have one and everything. It's gonna. There's a lot of lazy douchebags who are like, hey, you handle this. Here's my pin. Here's my pin number.
I mean, just give them one of these. Like, just give them some USB thing that they have to plug in, and you put their thumbprint on it to sign it. Like,
and here, Hollywood, by the way, will screw this up. They'll do deep fakes, but they'll only use deep fakes of already famous people that they already have to pay for. It's the stupidest thing in the world. They put out cartoons now, and they have to have famous people voice them for some reason. It's like, why do you have this actor? Why don't you just get a voice talent? It's bizarre, stupid, whatever. Anyway, you go to next. That was good. Fust. what are the most important factors companies look at when considering blockchain for security? What do you guys think?
Is
I
it
think
Cost
basically
probably
it's
first and
what they
foremost.
should look for?
accountability for whatever. If you're talking about like inter company, it's that accountability for whatever you handled.
Yeah.
Profit's always going to be the number one motive. And one good thing with implementing blockchain into pretty much anything right now, it's really affordable and likely pays for itself in a very short amount of time.
Depending on what you do, yeah, right. I agree. It's like,
Yeah, I mean, like, at the end of the day, software. It's like we were talking about earlier. Was the Apple exploited deliberate backdoor, or was it a 0-day exploit? Like, at the end of the day, that your device is only as secure as the next backdoor that hasn't been discovered yet. And one of the key things for any software, I don't care whether it's blockchain software or anything, it's, are you running the latest versions of things? Because if you're not, there's a good chance that there is some security vulnerability that people know about that has been fixed that you are still vulnerable to.
And then there's social engineering on top of that. You can have something that's totally secure, and there's somebody who knows how to be a smooth talker to the tech rep that answers, and all of a sudden they were handed your password.
Yeah, right. That's the bigger hole.
It's like
everything.
Like Greg and I were talking about earlier this week. It's, what's the number one thing that you can do to have good security? Have good passwords and don't share them with people. The number two thing is make sure your software is up to date. But like, one of my big gripes about the Ethereum ecosystem is that the Geth client, which is what most of Rivet's software is based on, they do a series of releases one after the other, and they have no concept of a stable branch. So they're constantly adding new features. They're changing APIs, and so if you want to keep up to date, you've got to constantly be taking on new features and stuff that you don't know how that might destabilize your application. And yet they sneak in security updates without announcing them, so that if you're not keeping up to date on all these little security features, then, or if you're not keeping up to date on all of these updates that include a bunch of stuff that you don't want, is going to break your application, then you're also missing out on security updates. And in blockchain, a missed security update can put you on the wrong side of a chain split. About a year ago, Infura had a 6-hour outage, I think, because they were running an outdated version of Geth and ended up on the wrong side of it. So, I guess my recommendation of what companies should be looking at is, what are the release processes? Are they good about putting out security updates? How do they handle basic software security practices that those don't go away just because you're running on a blockchain?
Yeah, and I would say I agree with that. I would say from a business angle, it would be flexibility, because you don't know what's coming. You don't know what's going to change in technology overall, let alone blockchain. And you don't know what holes will be found, right? Like you mentioned. The other is open source. It's funny, if you guys look back, I actually got into a conversation with Vitalik on Twitter about Zoom, because Dragonchain specifically disallows. We have a policy against anybody using Zoom because they had backdoors. They had a lot of interesting, very weird things, and then they claimed, "Oh, we're not doing that anymore," but it turns out they were, and they then announced, "Oh, again, we're saying we're not going to do that anymore." And I was kind of blown away that Vitalik didn't get the fact that, well, it's not open source, you can't trust it. And we went back and forth a little bit on it, but politely. But it was it was odd to me. Somebody in like Vitalik wouldn't get that. It's like, why would I put this on my machine, let alone, use it in any other capacity if I can't see the back, especially with the reputation. I mean, it's one thing, you can have one or the other. You can say, look, we're closed source because you trust us, because we never ever do this. Here's our philosophy. And you have to prove that. And it's hard to prove. But there are some companies, they take that route. And sometimes that's good business, but on the other side, that's the beauty of why Linux, why open source is what it is, because I can look at it. Now, something that brings up, though, I want to see what you guys think about this, particularly for the audience. And this is not investment advice, right? But I always think about the fact that likely not enough is known about the curves that are used in some cryptographic environments, and why were certain curves chosen, and if they sourced from government entities, government organizations, some of them. So what do you guys think about that? The potential for backdoors in the basis of everything that we right now trust as math, that there could be backdoors in there. And
I mean, very, very few people are qualified to speak to that. I mean, like, I consider myself a computer security expert, and I don't use that term lightly, but I don't consider myself a cryptographic expert. And, like those curves, I don't even have the first clue how to evaluate whether there could be.
Right. And that is a point that if you in your position, because I'm not, I'm a generalist, I'm an architect, right? So I know various things about those. I know where to tread lightly and where not to go at all, right? I know, okay, I will not touch something that is patterned like this. But that's one of the things that is always on my mind, that you imagine, and this is the crazy stuff, that, everything that we know and trust in this industry, as we're trusting it because of the math. We don't have we don't actually know. That's kind of scary. But
well, and I mean, like, you can see a proof, for example, that, like, this particular implementation of zero knowledge proofs is provably as secure as elliptic curve signature, digital signing with the same curve.
Yeah.
But and I don't even understand how those proofs work. That from this you can extrapolate this.
That's some pretty. Yeah.
But I kind of trust that there's mathematicians who can look at that and go, yeah, okay, this checks out. But at the end of the day, there's a lot we don't know about. Well, there is a very small set of people who are qualified to speak to those things, and we're all just kind of trusting them at the end of the day. Because, like, even though I can see the code and I can see that it works, and I could rewrite that code in another language and see that it still works, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, that's one of the things I was talking about earlier. I remember when I was in school and learning about it, when they started touching on this subject, that was when I was like, oh shit, I am over my head. I am gonna drown, because it was like so complicated, so foreign. It's one of those things that we've created that is really, really hard to understand. And like you were saying, just that tiny bit of people are really qualified to speak on it and to talk about it. That was literally the scariest thing, that when I was learning about blockchain, that was it. That was when I was like, oh, maybe this is too much.
Well, personally, I think even today that, people need to be a little bit cautious and apprehensive. Like, I don't think people fully grasp, like, the difference between, like, open source and closed source. And I don't think a lot of people understand that each one does kind of have some benefits, where, I almost feel like open source at times can create a false sense of security, because people believe, oh, it's open source, so everything's known about it. But in reality, my biggest kind of discussion point is like, okay, well, in this environment we're in today, people basically operate by following trust. So it's like a rolling level of trust that people are following. So Ethereum comes out, there's not very much money circulating around in it. There are a lot of bugs when it first comes out. There's a lot of constant patching that's going on. And as it starts gaining more trust, people start doing more and more bold and more complex operations. It kind of stress the system out, right? So they introduce smart contracts and, you know, solidities of freely expressive language. So you can actually exploit the compiler. You can exploit all sorts of things besides just the smart contract code itself, because it's like a big computer. And, you know, like you guys are saying, there are very few people who are actually qualified to be operating this level of consensus mechanisms. You know, we're really at a point where technology, you know, people say that it grows at an exponential curve, and people for a long time have been like, oh, technology seems like it's slowed down. And it did in the terms of hardware development, but in terms of software development, that's where it got exponentially more complex, because as a fact, you know, we're shifting our digital economies onto blockchains now. And the level of coordination that these systems require, it was just not possible in any other era. So, you know, things just get very complicated as you start making them open source.
And I would say that's true, and I would say there are measures around that a lot of people don't look at, like, you know, how much is that code used? You know, you know, it's nice, like say on Ethereum, that you can say, you know, this particular multi-sig wallet has been used this many times without issue. It's never an absolute, because there might still be something hidden. But I think we're getting to the next question then, that it turns into, and I will say about that I tend to think of these very complex abstract principles that are used in this technology itself as logic components. Like say, don't think of it in terms of the math, think of it in terms of the black box effect. If I, you know, have a public key and I sign a message, Sean can verify that message came from whoever had my public key, which he can for various reasons assume is probably me, based on the importance of the message or lack of importance, right? That there are a bunch of interesting things you can do there that are much more normie friendly. They're easier to, you know, understand. And that's how when we do things with businesses, that's how we communicate all these capabilities, because then they'll go back and they realize that they could assemble these tools in ways with their own data that we would never understand. We would never understand what they actually need or what problems they have. And if they understand the capabilities instead of the implementation, how it works, it's much more important, right? You know, if as an example with hash power, it's much more important for them to know that you can measure how much energy was used, or at least how many hashes, which is some, you know, there's a way to map that to money. Much easier for them to understand that than how assembling and creating a block and coming to consensus actually happens. That doesn't really matter to them. What matters to them is the effect, right? Anyway, so you guys are good. Okay, go to the next. Bad Hair Club. Will there be any type of gamification like metaverses, even if it's something simple? What do you guys think about that? Now, I have something.
I personally think that gaming and blockchain were kind of born for each other. And I think that kind of the big adoption wave for crypto, it's probably going to come from gaming. Because if there's one thing that, you know, it kind of applies to all ages, it's like everyone enjoys leisure time. And, you know, I know personally, like, I enjoy playing video games, and a lot of adults enjoy playing video games. And I think that's going to be kind of like the common bridge, because in all games, like World of Warcraft, for example, right, which is many years ago, the idea of in-game economies have always made sense. There's always been like an in-game gold, there's always been like this in-game marketplace kind of mentality. So it only really makes sense to me that gaming is the killer application, because so many people spend so many hours investing into these video games, and they don't want to have people cheating and people hacking the game, right? So I think that it'll definitely become like one of the large adoption areas, because it's going to secure gaming and make it more secure for everyone.
When it comes to
and
gaming,
potentially offer interoperability between games, right? Like that I got this game in, like got this item in this one game, and this other game is allowing me to
import the weapon skins.
Use that item in this game.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's the key word you use, is allowing. It's been a while, but when I was working for Xbox, it was I don't know, 5-6 years ago. The sale of digital clothes outpaced real clothing for the first time ever, and that's insane. That is absolutely insane. But and it's such a huge moneymaker. And when you brought up the sword thing, so much money is made by these microtransactions, and the thing is, they're all like paper plates. They're one-time use. If you're a level 3, and if you just had a level 3 sword, but you have this level 1, it's so hard to find a level 3 sword. You buy the level 3 sword, and it helps you to kick ass. And now you're level 6. Your level 3 sword's a piece of crap. You need this level 6 sword. So when you buy the next level 6 sword, or if you find a level 6 sword, if you don't have to pay for it, that level 3 sword is still all the money you paid for it. You'll never use it again. It's just gone. That money's gone. But if you have the ability to sell it to someone else, number one, you're going to use that money maybe to buy that level 6 sword. So the company is going to make less money. And then the other guy's never going to buy the level 3 sword from them. He's going to buy it from you. So there's a lot of greed, kind of holding that back when it comes to allowing stuff like that. Which, as usual, a lot of things that are really good for consumers aren't great for companies. So we need to have someone.
They could do that on NFT
to have competition.
I mean, imagine they do that on NFT and set it up where they get, X amount every single time it is traded for the lifetime of that NFT, like people do now. That's maybe the incentive companies need to allow.
Yeah, take an exchange fee of sorts.
Yeah. Well, that's what they wouldn't even need to. It wouldn't need to be on Ethereum to do that either, right? It's just an agreement. I have this, I can move it. And by the way, he said gamification. I'm thinking, okay, so
yeah, it was gamification, not game chat.
When we talk about this, so this in particular is one of the points that does BTC's code base prove this? Satoshi's wallet, big prize, and I think it's a matter of levels. Like say, okay, everybody in here today, if we were the only people transacting on Bitcoin, or let's just say some chain, right? First of all, we kind of trust each other, but let's say none of us trust Sean, right? And yet we have the math, so we can know, okay, Sean's not going to spend 10 grand or 100 grand, let alone $1 billion to fake this transaction, right? That's an interesting point. But if you put something on there that is of radically more importance than Satoshi's stash, right? Satoshi has a big stash, but it's not exactly nation state level, right? It's not something that a nation state would care about at all. But when they care about something, like let's say that Bitcoin as a whole becomes a threat to their own currency, that's when you'll know whether they have a backdoor or not. Right. So, and you might not know who it is, but that's when you'll find that, holy crap, we didn't expect that to happen. So it's all a matter of levels, and we're still early enough that even as big as it is,
well, and like
not, yeah.
Even if they've got a backdoor that gives them easy access to Satoshi's wallet, they're using that backdoor. If they have it, they're using that backdoor for other things, and revealing that they have it is probably not worth what they could get from that.
Well, it depends on the timing. There might be a point that they want to take it down, and if they
right. But like,
it's not real.
to just try and take the crypto in his wallet and spend it. Like that's not worth exposing that they have this capability. Right. But if Bitcoin becomes a big enough threat, that might be worth exposing that they have.
Well, and even that alone, if Satoshi were still alive, the reason that he wouldn't want to move it is because the value itself would be affected just in a move. Just to know it's like, oh my gosh, there's all this there. It could be the upset supply.
You talk about gamification. Imagine if like China or some other adversary said, okay, we're going to put our reserves, no more US dollars. Our reserves are all Bitcoin. All you have to do is pull that money and just dump it on exchanges, and you could literally crash that economy. If everything that their economy is backed with dropped 80% in 2 weeks, or a week,
it's
a definite.
But at least that point, it would be at some point it will develop into a competition. If that is how things develop, that slowly over time, multiple large, and they wouldn't announce it in advance. Of course, they would accumulate and then announce, and the value would be affected positively. But there would be bigger whales, right?
We saw this in a little small scale when El Salvador did that. They were attacked by the IMF. They were attacked, and they literally went on Twitter and said, thanks, we're just buying the dip. Keep doing it. We'll buy more. Which was the best thing they could have done.
Well, yeah. And the other interesting point to be made is, we've been experimenting with pretty successfully the use of blockchain events, a lot of mundane events inside of the DEN transactions that help the system determine. In fact, it's all automated right now. And there's a lot to be improved, of course. But it's interesting that we're using these actions and the gamification, in this economy to determine when people are trying to manipulate the economy. And so we've got a bunch of really, in my opinion, super interesting features that will automatically, and it's not AI, it is literally just something that we can. It's very easily followed. That if this particular situation is there, then that means this when they're voting. That they're this is not a real account, and they're trying to manipulate this little prediction market on evaluating content. And so we saw these pretty amazing patterns of people grouping either with each other, which we don't mind, and grouping bots to vote up a particular post or to vote down a particular post, and therefore manipulate that economy. And we can then take all of that information and put it together to counter the behavior. So it becomes, and the goal is to make it so that rather than trying to attack the system, you follow the process. It's more profitable to follow the regular, real process of a legitimate person voting on or weighing in on the evaluation of that content than it is to try to put bots together and attack it. The more you put on chain, the easier it is to do. So anyway, pretty cool. You go next?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How can blockchain, Angel Breaker, how can blockchain help secure privileged accounts? And that's, I think, what I was talking about. I think it is absolutely ridiculous that in the very least, these channels don't have some way to prove authenticity of a message from the White House, from the president, from a senator, from a congressperson. It doesn't make sense that they aren't
again, the ability to delegate those privileges in a way that people can see who they have been delegated to and know that yes,
and thus the blockchain. You think about the Fed. Right. The Fed, the fact that we could go into some of this, but the Fed, how they when they are out there testifying that every single word is chosen with a lot of care to not affect the markets, but it does, right? They say one word and boom, the market drops, the market goes up, right? The fact that those are not pre-prepared and just put out there, where it can all be controlled and provably from them, is crazy. And that's one of those cases where it should be, like I said, there should be some proof that this is the statement, and when it comes out, we can all prove that that is really the statement. And so we know that they would have had the time to check that somebody had corrupted their system, or
Interestingly,
I was going to talk about Janet Yellen for a second. I don't know if y'all have ever
real quick,
watched her
I just
testify,
wanted to
but
jump
she's
in
the
and
only
say
person that will answer a question. You can have Zuckerberg, you can have anyone testifying, and Senator asks him a simple question. Do you eat babies? Well, Senator, that's a really good question. I appreciate you asking me that question. Thank you very. And then they won't answer it. And people will ask Yellen a question, and she'll be like, "No, blah blah blah." Then but she actually says yes or no.
Did she answer about the insider trading inside the Fed that happened recently? Have they asked her that, or have they not asked her that?
I don't know, but I've anytime I've watched, I've been shocked because she's like, "No, blah blah blah," or "Yes, blah blah blah." I was like, "That's just weird."
But real quick to comment on governments, why don't they use any type of verification systems? Some of these governments are moving towards that. So for example, like if you're a resident of Estonia, you are issued under your national ID like a set of private and public keys, so that you can actually verify all information that you submit to them. And then vice versa, any information they publish, you can verify that that's actually the Estonian government saying it.
Yeah.
And so that's not on a blockchain, but, that is how blockchains work, is that,
right, and
private and public signatures.
And that's one of the other points I've been making for years, is that the prevalence of blockchain is kind of helping to increase the prevalence of people using public-private key signing for stuff that could have been done without a blockchain in the first place. But now that more people are getting used to the idea of using apps that require signing things, the infrastructure is there to use it for things that may not necessarily be blockchain. Now, you can also use that for the president to publish. The press secretary is allowed to make press releases, and they are essentially his press releases when that happens, and then revoke that ability at some point in the future. That can all exist on the blockchain. You can see who did it, when, and so forth. But just the sheer increasing prevalence of signing is, I think, a big win from blockchain, even if it's not used in a blockchain context.
Yeah. The time is if you need time, it's you need a blockchain, and if you need there various things you can do with a blockchain that you can't do with just the regular key signature infrastructure. So I didn't realize. Sorry, we hit an hour. Do you guys want to finish the rest real quick here, or stop?
I don't think there's too many more.
Okay. Okay. So, which security benefits can a blockchain provide on-premise, hybrid cloud, and infrastructure? I think we already kind of hit that. I mean, it's that's all about data and trust, right? JEGs, Dragonchain have announced many times they have quantum safe blockchain solutions to ensure security highest levels. Should companies be using this now? Of course. Or is there not enough of a threat yet? No, I mean, the quantum side is the bigger part. If you have very important data, or if it's something's infrastructure, even as health data. I mean, you're talking about encryption, and it's just something that's an advanced form of encryption, and you can use it along with other things. So
right, yeah, I guess I would generally say that companies should be thinking about a quantum safe migration plan, and should have some idea how they're going to do that. As it stands right now, quantum safe algorithms tend to be more computationally expensive, require bigger keys, produce bigger signatures, or at least some combination of those things. And so there are still advantages to using quantum unsafe algorithms while you can, but generally, companies and more importantly, the teams that are producing blockchains should know what they're going to do when the shit hits the fan. and not just rely on, well, that's never going to happen. That's a long way off.
Yep. Anybody else? Yep. Yeah. All right, we go next. Jay Galt. Gosh, you can't have two questions. Come on. When you see white paper only projects promising to deliver the world with billion-plus market caps start normalizing to true value versus speculation, I guess anybody have any thoughts? That's an interesting one.
The truth is that markets always find equilibrium over time. So if you release something without substance and it's all marketing, in the end, it's going to go to zero. Like, there has to be substance laying the foundation for what value you're putting into said system. And also, you have to be very careful with white paper projects because those economic models are, just theories on paper. So, unless you're like an economist, when it comes to like white paper related things, it's oftentimes better to just wait till it launches on the market and then grab it and see if they actually delivered what they said they were going to deliver. Because at the end of the day, you can't be buying vaporware and expect to make it. Like, the honest truth is that if blockchain has no utility, then there's no point for it. Like, if you're not applying it to solving problems, then it inherently is like just like a piece of code.
Yeah. Well, that's the other side of the coin, though. If you're just looking at something for speculation, it doesn't matter, because you don't care.
Sure. If you're just
doing the speculation, it's a piece of crap. It's which I've done. I've been in masternodes that I've been in for like 2 months, 3 months, which were nothing except we're a masternode coin, and we have hype and some money, and it basically it's the Ponzi scheme. It's the you get in and you get out as fast as you can and make the most that you can, and that's the speculative side of it. And we look down on it, we talk about it, but it still exists, and it's a big part of it. That's why, and the other side of that is if you do wait, and it is promise the world, white paper, but it actually comes through, then you've missed out on so many of those gains. If you waited 6 months or 3 months or 4 months till they actually do produce something.
Sure. So I mean, in that case, if you're looking to play speculatively, my best advice would be don't invest more than you're willing to lose.
Always.
So that way you can actually exercise the patience required for it to get to full term.
I mean, in like 2017, that describes 90% of the projects that were being released. But now I've noticed ones that are purely just a coin to be a coin because, money go up.
Mm-hmm.
They seem to hit a real kind of small cap and kind of peak there. I think people now have wised up. They want to see.
Yeah, something Wolf said. Very least a good plan. Equilibrium. I think that the market and people have gotten more mature and more savvy when it comes to that.
I need an MVP.
They're still out there, man. They're still
they're still. It's all celebrity worship still. I mean, you look at most of the speculation now is Ethereum founder, somebody that has a public name, right? I think it's all about windows, and whether you talk about patience and you talk about because I do agree. I think in time, equilibrium is found. You even think with the U.S. dollar, that's going to happen. You think, okay, if we're talking a couple of 100 years, is the U.S. dollar going to be in the same? Probably not, right? Something's going to happen, and so it kind of depends. And if you're talking a couple of months, it's like, well, who cares, right? But if you're talking about a few years or decades, then all of a sudden you have to start thinking about, wait a minute, what's this really doing? And it depends upon your window and how much patience you have. And I think I'm frustrated because I think a lot of the speculators are. Rather than educating themselves about what the technology can be doing, they're effectively day traders in the 80s, just with a different form of tech.
They don't care. And that was my point.
But here's the thing. But the thing that annoys me is it's stupidity. They're making freaking nickels and dimes where they can be doing much, much more if they are concentrating on what could be built and where are the real opportunities. That's what's being missed right now, in my opinion. You follow Twitter, I'm like, NFTs are there because they have a couple of interesting angles on how they can market that you couldn't with fungible. It's freaking absurd, but it's all meaningless stuff. It's crazy.
To make an interesting point on what you said, and this is definitely not, lightning round, but when it comes to, regulation, the SEC and so on, that's one area they have really saved us on, because we could have had a whole nother 2017, because it shifted from just being able to put something out there to going to celebrities. And most celebrities, they don't know what the hell it is. They're just like, hey, this is a big blockchain, crypto, yeah. And the SEC went after them. I mean, if they pushed an ICO or someone used their celebrity for that, they got hit hard. So I think if they wouldn't have, if the Wild West would have been allowed to move into that area fully of hero worship, we would have had a whole nother explosion, a whole nother, fiasco.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's great. That's all the questions. That was a good show. Thanks a bunch. Everybody, hear me go. Make sure anything else I need to do. Everybody, tell us, what do you have, Austin? What's going on coming up this week? You want everybody to know about?
This week's been a blur. I'm going to pass on this one.
Okay. All right. Sean, what is going on?
My weeks are always blurry. Same old. Check me out on Twitter, YouTube. I have a weird interview coming up about NFTs. Speaking of that, there's a guy that has an oddities museum, and he's putting everything into NFTs. And I thought that would be really interesting for a use of blockchain and NFTs are for like little small towns. Every town has this like little museum for whatever. There's one that has Spurs, the next town over, and it's a way for them to really kind of grow outside of their county. You know what I mean? To put it out there for people that are all over the world who have never seen a Spur, like in Europe or wherever. They could go to that little, the little museum and see everything, and maybe be able to purchase some NFTs. So that was kind of
real Wild West. That's
aspect.
Awesome. Yes, very good. Russ.
A couple big stories at globalcryptopress.com. Intel is about to step into the mining industry. They just announced that their new GPUs will be mining capable. A lot of people thought it would have a software block. It will not. Also, Edward Snowden warns of Bitcoin's evil twin. Check out what it is, globalcryptopress.com, or we're syndicated on both Apple News and Google News.
That was a really good. I want to know now what that is.
Yeah, it's good. Sweet.
I guarantee you will have a goatee. Anyway, Wolf, what's going on new? Wolf.
Hey guys. So over by Polarity, so one thing I can mention is that we have a fiat gateway processing partner that we're in closed testing with. So that'll be coming to Polarity and the Turtle Network pretty soon. And it covers most all countries. So that's pretty exciting. And then just the other day, TN actually hit an all-time high for on-chain activity. It's like 20,000 TXs in a day. And that was a result of like the Pirate Life Casino and the End Life Casino and, Polarity transactions. So there's a lot of dApps that are popping up on the network. Sorry?
Yeah, I've been hearing a lot about Turtle lately.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
We're
also
we're
William
trying to
Shatner
get
went
into
to
high
space.
gear finally.
Yes, William Shatner went to space. Yep.
The oldest man to ever go to space probably will be that way for a long time. But yeah,
Probably.
all the memes have been hilarious.
That would have been good.
Like they should put that little monster on the wing of the spacecraft and put him by the window from the Twilight Zone episode.
Yeah, so Babylon Bee had a post that they evil and his evil twin came back. Anyway, all right. For Dragonchain, I think I'm giving an interview this afternoon. I don't know when it'll air. And We have DIN Gov call this afternoon also, which is a live call to go through all the DIN social governance stuff, all the things going on there. And follow us on Twitter, it's Real Denizens, Dragonchain. We changed it from Dragonchain Gang to Dragonchain. Make sure you note that. And I'm Jojo Rowe. See you next week. Make sure you go and share the episode so that people, we can get the views up, and everybody who asks questions will get more lot. I think that's everything, right? Yes. All right. Thanks, guys.
Later.
But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why, 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other thing. Not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win. We choose to go to the moon.